Senator Wintrow, how are you?
I am great. In fact, I'd rather be here than anywhere else right now.
Nailed it. This is a great place. It's almost as good as my studio. I mean, looks identical, but it's almost as good as my studio in near Eagle, because like that one I have like a dump truck of food. I got a microwave now and like all the goodies, so you can hang out. You can exist there for a long time. I got a mini fridge here,
You,
but
you need to get a heater.
I know it is a little frigid. We're in the basement.
Listen, I already came from a very cold place, so I need a little heater.
Next time, I promise I'll have one. So you are, again, a Democrat. You're a senator. You've been around for a while. I think you were saying 10 years. Is that accurate?
Yes, I was suggesting to you earlier that my portrait has changed drastically in the last 10 years.
I'm sure it's fantastic.
If you walk through the state house and look at the portraits,
man, the Idaho of 10 years ago must have been something different.
Exactly. That's what I was kind of lamenting when I had my portrait taken and looked in going down the hallways. And 10 years ago, I really felt a little more hopeful. I felt a lot more hopeful, actually. And as I was sharing with you earlier, this January marks the 10th year since we had a full hearing for a bill that we term Add the Words. And there was a group of people for years that were trying to encourage the legislature to pass a bill that would add sexual orientation, gender identity to our Human Rights Act to prohibit discrimination based on who you are and who you love. So basically, just because you're gay doesn't mean you can evict somebody or fire them or not feed them in a restaurant. That's all it would say. The same kind of prohibitions we have for discrimination based on race or sex, nationality, religion, etc. So I can remember 10 years ago as a freshman legislator sitting on that committee, very nervous as a freshman, learning the ropes. We had 24 hours of hearings. Chairman Lurcher at the time chaired those committees. But even in that time, I still felt a little hope that the people that testified, who shared all those stories, had touched the hearts of the committee and that they would actually finally pass this bill. And even though they didn't, and it did not pass, I could still see compassion in many of the faces on the committee. Representative Bateman, Representative Andrus in particular. There were tears shed. And I know they were struggling with the fact that they wanted to treat people as people, not as objects, and make sure everybody had the same rights as everyone else. But they were struggling with some of the political implications, especially of that closed primary.
If I may ask,
Yeah.
do we have federal protections for this? So essentially the way I understand this is, say I'm a landlord or I'm an employer and I find out one of my employees or one of my tenants is gay. Under Idaho law right now, there's nothing to stop me from saying like, oh, you're gay, you're out of here. Or like you're fired, you're evicted, whatever it is. And that seems crazy to me, but aren't there like federal restrictions?
It is legal in the state of Idaho to fire somebody because they're gay. Period. It is legal to this day. Now, I think, our country's come a long way, especially with people who are gay. Many of us, regardless of our party affiliations, are gay, have gay family members, parent, etc. Right? Our neighbors, everyone. And I think that the attitude has changed a lot in the last two decades, 3 decades, right? And most people are like, hey, let it go, let people live their lives. But as I was saying, 10 years ago, at least I felt a little hope, and now I have very little hope. Because what I saw then was a deliberation of what should we do, and now it's just totally a different side of the coin, and now it's how many rights can I take away? So instead of making sure your rights are protected, now I see this legislature actively just chipping away and taking away rights. And we saw the bill right out of the gate, the first bill introduced in the House, that would basically, it was a resolution to go to the Supreme Court, that if the Supreme Court were ever to rule that gay marriage should be determined by the states, we have a trigger law in this state and gay marriage would be illegal. Now, that's very convoluted and very conflictual, very complex. and it would be a lot to unwind.
Wait, what do you mean it would be that seems pretty simple.
Well, we first have to go all the way to the Supreme Court,
Oh,
right?
got it.
I mean, that takes time.
And like the Supreme Court, not the Idaho Supreme Court.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we saw what happened in Roe v. Wade, right? That Supreme Court overturned 50 years of precedent
Sure.
and went all the way the other way. And we've heard judges say, remarks about, how this could be expanded. So there's a lot of precedent here. We've had legal gay marriage since 2014. And
oh, I get it. So if it ever got
Right.
passed to the state and Idaho did in fact have a trigger law that went into effect that made it illegal, and let's say this happened tomorrow, instantly,
Yes.
then we would have from 2014 to 2025, we would have all of these individuals who had gotten married, had engaged in legally binding, bank accounts, deeds, and, they have different wills. Because it's my understanding that the gay marriage carries with it more than just sentiment,
Oh.
which is like, no, we're talking like right of survivorship
Yes.
and things of this nature. So
Oh.
there are legal complications that come along with abolishing that.
Oh, probably hundreds of pages of code, and especially tax code. You named a couple of them. Being able to go in a hospital room, to be able to make legal decisions. I mean, all of that would basically be at odds with this. And quite frankly, I just don't think that's the way we want to spend $40,000 a day in the legislature introducing bills that are going to unwind people's right to their family and have access to laws. I mean, I'm appalled that this is the first bill out of the gate, because we have bigger fish to fry in our state. So
Is there, there was in my former state of California, I remember there being debates over this, and then definitions in the Constitution. There were all kinds of conversations. And I remember asking somebody, I was like, okay, look, there's the idea of like a domestic partnership, which at that time granted some level of legal implication. It wasn't quite a marriage, but like, I don't understand what all the sticking points are here. It's like, okay, you have two people that want to be joined in union, and they want to have, like, if one of them's dying in the hospital, they want to look at somebody to be like, are you the next of kin? Or like, are you the spouse? Are you something? And that person's
Right.
legally able to say like, yes, I am. So they go
Yeah.
in. And it always was curious to me. It's like, okay, if people don't like the idea of marriage per se, then is there an alternative that would grant people analogous rights, right? Like, it was the domestic partnership where like you take this legally binding document and like now you can have a discount on gym memberships and, whatever it is, but like it carries weight with it the same way. Is there that conversation? Because the people that I've spoken with, or at least spoke with when I was a younger person, they're like, well, I think gay marriage should be between like a man and a woman. I'm like, okay, that's fine that you think that. And like, what about these other situations where people have been like, engaged, and they're like, well, let's just not make that marriage. It's like, okay, I understand that, but is there a way that we could navigate so that you're happy as the person who says man and woman, and they're happy when they're like, I get to go in the hospital when this person is dying, right? Like, is there anything that represents like a compromise for people?
I'm not even sure if you need one, right? I mean, we have the 14th Amendment. Everybody has access, the due process and equal rights, right? And so if marriage is something that we have in our country, why shouldn't everybody be able to have it? Because it does afford rights, responsibilities, and it's just part of our culture. So why would we pick a particular class and say no? Now, again, we've seen a lot of social progress, and this is not an issue anymore, I think, in the United States. And we'd rather look at, how are our public schools doing? How are we preserving, our public schools? How are we educating our kids, making sure that people can go to a doctor and don't have to choose between the grocery bill and a doctor's visit? Their property taxes. These are the real problems that government needs to solve, not people's personal lives, in my estimation anyway, not people's personal lives, not telling me what to read, telling me who to love, telling me what I can say, because this state government continues to erode in the processes. And what we see are all these bills that are limiting freedoms based on a particular group of their own little set of values that I think are way out of step with the majority of Idahoans, quite frankly. And eventually that'll catch up to them, I think.
I have not spoken with Representative Scott, and I did connect with her. She said she'd be happy to come on the show, which I'm very excited about, because I don't understand her perspective, right? I don't like, not that Not that I've never met somebody who says, hey, I think marriage should be a man and woman. I understand that. I don't know why she brought this bill to the table, but was there, and I don't know how this works, but like, was there any explanation or any like, this is why I think this is important, or like, this is damaging the state for this reason, like, essentially, like, why this bill? Like, why out of all the things going on, like, how come?
I think you're asking a really great question. And when we think about considering legislation, we should ask, like, how does this benefit the whole? We should basically be using the deliberative process. I don't know why she brought the bill. You'll ask her.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the why to me. What it matters to me is the effect and the impact. And that bill was introduced, and immediately I was getting text messages and emails from my constituents scared and concerned that their marriages were under attack, that they were going to lose their rights, lose property, all those kind of things. It's scary. And again, I don't think that benefits Idaho.
And that's what I want to know. So I think the why in this case, I understand what you're saying, which is like, look, I don't care why. But I think the why is important to understand because, like, I'm an idiot, right? So she comes in, she's like, well, Matt, let me explain, idiot, like why this is important and how this is affecting Idaho. It's like, great, I would like to know that. And if she's like, I just think this is important because my constituents want it because they have a certain, leaning or moral, whatever. It's like, okay, I want to know that too. The why is absolutely important. Now, whether or not people think the why justifies the difficulty that would befall upon people of Idaho, that's a different question. But the why is really important.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I hear what you're saying, but the very introduction of that was harmful. And if people are already scared and concerned about their own lives, families, kids, etc., that is not benefiting Idahoans, because these are Idahoans. There are a lot of people who are gay in our state, and they are Idahoans who should be taken seriously, and their rights should be afforded to them. And we should respect the dignity of their own lives and not try. The government's role is not to mandate who you love and who you marry, period. Sorry.
No, listen. You don't have to apologize. This is why I wanted to talk to you, because I want to understand this. And more than anything, I want everyone to understand because again, I don't know. This is what I'm trying to find out. So bottom line is from a human rights bill, from a human rights standpoint in the state of Idaho, as it stands right now, if you find out somebody's gay, you could evict them, you could fire them. They are not a protected class. Like if I find out that I have an employee, if I'm an employer and I find out that one of my employees is a female, right, I can't fire her just on the fact that she's a female. If I find out she's a tenant and she's a female, I'm like, oh, you're out of here. Like I can't do that. So there are these basic things that we take for granted with protected groups like gender or age. Like you can't fire somebody because they're 70, right? Or you can't, whatever it is. And as of right now, people that are gay are not afforded that protection.
That's correct. Because again, think about why we had to enact those laws in the first place in our country, right? Why did we have to do that? Because we were actively discriminating against people based on race, right?
And this is still not federally. There's no federal protection for this.
No. Now there was a federal law passed that by Congress this last time that I think helps protect gay marriage, especially if it's recognizing it from another state, et cetera. But again, regardless of all those details, I'll be interested to know why Heather Scott wanted to bring a bill that would effectively be a trigger bill if the Supreme Court ever ruled against people who are gay being married, that then it would basically outlaw it here in the state of Idaho. And again, I want to know how that is a priority for Idaho when we have schools that have leaking roofs, don't have enough teachers, kids walking across the street to go to the bathroom. Right? Why is that not a priority? Why is affordable health care not a priority? Why are our property taxes not a priority? Why is this what we're wasting our money on, $40,000 a day in the legislature? It is not the government's role. We should be concerned about infrastructure, schools, right? Making sure our public agencies are funded and providing the services that all of our constituents need and want, not, trying to determine everybody's personal life. I need the government to stay out of my personal business. I sound like a Republican. I'm talking about freedom and liberty to be ourselves and pursue our dreams and pursue happiness without the government, telling me how to do that, right? I sound like a Republican, a traditional one.
Listen, I can't say you're wrong. But again, don't look to me. I got a Godzilla over my shoulder. I don't know how.
Here's the point I was trying to make earlier is, look, 10 years ago, here we have this hearing for the first time after years of begging the legislature to have a hearing for basic fundamental rights for people who are gay, not to be fired because they're gay, not to be evicted and not to be, rejected from a restaurant, say, right? Those are basic things. And this legislature struggled with it. And even then I had a little hope. What I'm saying now, 10 years later, people have drawn lines in the sand and now they're attacking and they're taking away rights. They're not even considering the fact that you're even a human being anymore. And these kind of bills detract us from the things that we need to be focused on, right? Healthcare, education, an economy that works for everybody, government that's transparent and accountable, period.
And a small point that it's important to remember.
Am I raising my voice?
No, you're not. You're not. You're fine. You're fine. A small point that I think is really important to remember. If we pass human rights, right, or if we add this to the human rights,
I don't know how it is making anybody's lives miserable that my neighbor across the street is gay and married. Like, how is that detracting from your life and my life?
For sure.
Why are people so obsessed?
Hey, I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to understand.
Well, you tell me when you have your interview.
I'll send you a link. One thing that I think is really important to remember, and again, I'm for some reason I was having a hard time spitting it out, but if something came to pass and they're like, okay, let's add in that, your sexual orientation is not something that you can be fired from. That doesn't mean you can't fire somebody who's gay. That doesn't mean you can't evict somebody who's gay. Right. You just have to say, hey, I evicted them because they didn't pay rent. Here's the evidence. People are like, okay, you didn't pay rent. You got to get out of here. Like, just because we have a protected class doesn't mean you can't take action against that protected class. Just like if you fire somebody that's a woman today, right now, you say, I didn't fire her because she was a woman. I fired her because she wasn't doing the job. Right. And here's the evidence for that. So I know there's an additional burden or additional consideration, and people are worried about like, well, this is going to infringe on my ability to do like free commerce. Of like, no more than like, you can't just fire somebody for their gender. Like
their race.
Right.
Or their religion. Right. Or their nationality. Right?
So you can't, the religion is on there.
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yes.
Well, listen, I know it's a working day. You came down from the Capitol to do this. We wanted to hit these two things. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Again, like I said, I think the main point that I'm seeing in my 10 years here, experience brings you some perspective, is I'm really saddened and disheartened that we've actually come to a point where we could actually have a hearing and now we can't have one at all. And instead of even considering protections and equal rights, we're actually taking them away. And we're putting librarians in jail, doctors, we're criminalizing everyone. Oh,
gotcha.
Sorry.
No, I was you were leaning back.
And again, that's just not the government's role. I want to get back to the basics. We talk about that in schools, arithmetic and, reading, right? Like, let's get back to just basic government. Stop interfering in people's personal lives. Let's make sure we have good public education, healthcare, a good economy that's thriving, and let's keep our government transparent and accountable. That would help a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, again, Senator, I appreciate you coming in. I am excited to talk with Representative Scott. I hope she can make it in next week. Thank you for giving me your position. Thank you for speaking for your constituents, and thanks for what you're doing for Idaho.
Thank you. I love your show. I love being here. It's very fun.
I appreciate it. We'll do it again.